Ouch. Man. So yeah, it would be something to have metal hands. Oh, the punching we could do. Just like in the late 1991 video game Shatterhand. So, before we begin, this is one of those situations where we have a licensed game in Japan where the license is taken off of it and is just presented to us as an original IP video game. Now, the whole license thing goes back and forth. There are things that were not licensed games in Japan and then come over here as licensed games, and vice versa. And this is one of those situations. Now, Shatterhand started life as a Super Sentai Ranger tie-in video game. It originally came out in October of 1991. It was a tie-in to a tokusatsu show, that's to say a special effects show, what we would call Power Rangers, Tokyo Shirei Soul Brain. Gotta love that. This is one of those 3 guys instead of 5 guys Ranger shows. So it never really came over here as part of Power Rangers. I like to imagine that if the Big Bad Beetleborgs had continued, they would have tied into Soul Brain, which is good. You're a super cop. You're a proto RoboCop, and it was actually made of part of a trilogy of Super Ranger series, all about cops in a future time. And yeah, there's actually a website where you can play the original Shatterhand as Soul Brain in its original Japanese format. And you can see it does kind of works well, as a Power Ranger game. You have big costume heroes fighting big costume villains and, punching minions really hard. And, of course, you got the robot sidekicks. That's very much like a tokusatsu kind of thing. So, yeah. So that does, of course, put the people releasing it in America in kind of an odd position. So now they need a new story. They need new characters. Need new sprites. When I say new sprites, I mean pretty much the main character changes. Okay, and I'm not trying to think that they kind of did a rush job on this, because they animated new cutscenes. Okay, and oh, how glorious it is to see cutscenes rendered on an 8-bit system. It is so magical. I mean, not as great as Ninja Gaiden, but pretty good for given the time they were allotted. Now, this new story, which is not about the Soul Brain team saving future Tokyo, this is about an evil group of mercenaries who are trying to take over the world in the year 2030. They are called Metal Command, and they are led by General Gus Grover. None of the soldiers in the U.S. Army are up to the snuff, but a cop from the Bronx named Stephen Herman, after losing his arms in a terrible conflict with the Metal Command terrorists, was given new arms. Yes, metal hands. And with now his metal hands, he can now punch through anything. And so began his quest to personally save the world through punching, which is the greatest plot for an NES game that I know of. And it's probably the most epic battle between 2 people named Steven and Gus that we'll ever have the privilege of playing. So I definitely recommend you go and track this down. All right, so the mechanics of the game are pretty cool. Much like Mega Man X, there's an introductory stage where you fight a boss. And from there, you epically stand on the precipice of a cliff in front of 3 giant TVs. But, it's a video wall. In the 90s, video walls are the coolest thing ever, okay? So you look on the video wall and you choose, epically, from your precipice, which of the 5 stages you go to next. And they're the same stages, essentially, from Tokyo Soul Brain. Except that they took out the submarine stage, I think, and then they replaced it with like a House of the Dead mutant zombie factory. Just fine, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Both are great. You have to make it through 5, admittedly, very difficult stages. And this brings up the kind of the gameplay loop of the game. Now, you're given 3 lives, but the lives are not distributed equally, okay? Let's say you get up to the very end of the stage and you die, you have to go back to the beginning, okay? Well, you keep the money that you earned through punching when you go back to the beginning. So now you have opportunities to buy things that just could not physically do at all in the first time through. So your second time through and your second life becomes categorically different than the first time through because of all these little platform shops that you step on. Okay? And I think that's actually a pretty smart design decision because, part of Nintendo Hard and part of the limitations of the Nintendo RAM is that, content is repeating things because they're difficult and hard to get right. So, but by doing it this way, it categorically changes when you have to go back and redo that level within the precious chip space that they have. And it kind of makes things more enjoyable. It kind of makes you feel like, even if you ultimately fail, which is very, very common, your minutes spent going through stages several times were not wasted. Well, yeah, there was more like 3 different stages than 1 stage, if you catch my meaning. All right, and we can't forget about the robot buddies. There's a system where you don't collect a power-up, you collect a third of a power-up at a time. They can either be alpha or they can be beta. Now, depending on the combination and the order of the A's and the B's, you unlock a robot helper, but the what you spell determines what type of robot helper you will get. And these robot helpers are so valuable. And another thing that changes on the second playthrough, you've collected different letters. Okay, well, thank you for taking this trip down memory lane and punching many, many things. I hope you all have a great weekend, and a little play goes a long way.